In this drawing, let's go ahead and create a tourist parking lot. Before we begin creating the feature lines of all the different parts of the parking lot, let's take a look at how feature lines interact with each other. Let's look at these two feature lines that are in our drawing right now. Notice how we have two viewports open. This is a good idea as it allows you to see what's going on as you're creating your 3D objects. What you can see here is I've got a feature line at 0 elevation. That's what this rectangle is doing right here. We also have another feature line crossing it, and you'll notice how that feature line is actually draping to the 0 elevation. That's because this feature line, the rectangle, was created after this one was drawn. So as you can see, the feature lines interact with each other in a way that makes sense. In a surface, you cannot have crossing break lines. And so that's how feature lines react with each other. If you do make a mistake and accidentally prioritize one feature line over another one, simply move it from 0, 0 to 0, 0. So if I go ahead and select this object here, I'll just run the move command and I'll type in 0, 0, press enter, 0, 0, press enter. And now you'll notice now this one takes priority over that one, thereby adjusting the elevations of that feature line that was at 0 elevation. We don't need these, so let's go ahead and just select them and delete them. So let's go ahead and start here first, where we have this nice multi-leader for you. And what we're going to do is we're going to do a combination of feature line tools. If you want any additional information on a feature line tool that we discuss in this video, simply navigate to the Civil 3D help. The first thing you want to do is you want to actually just draw a feature line from scratch, and we're going to overlap this survey figure because we're going to use this feature line. We can't edit the survey figure because it comes from the survey database, and we want to be able to manipulate ours, so we'll go ahead and do so by creating a new one on top of it. We want to create a brand new site, and we'll call this one Tourist Parking Lot, and click OK. For the style, we'll just go with basic feature line. We can give it a name, but we're not going to right now, and we'll go ahead and leave the layer as set by default. We'll click OK here, and go ahead and snap to the endpoint of the feature line. When you do so, notice how it automatically grabs the elevation. This is exactly what we want. Press enter to grab that elevation. Now we'll go ahead and snap to the endpoint of this survey figure right there. Notice how it's showing you the elevational difference. That's fine. Press enter. We'll go ahead and snap to this midpoint here because we're going to use that as a center line. That's the elevational difference. Press enter. And lastly here, just to kind of cover the eventual fillet that we're going to use with this entranceway, we'll just grab the midpoint here, press enter, and grab the endpoint there, and press enter. Press enter again to end the command. We now have a feature line ready to work with. Now what we first want to do is start with the center line. So we'll go ahead and start the feature line command again. In this case, let's go ahead and give it a name. Again, you don't have to do this, but it just makes sense sometimes. That way you can kind of see what that feature line was meant to be. We'll call this one center line of drive. You can give it a different style if you'd like to. We'll go ahead and pick chord or crown, just so it goes on, let's say, the right layer. Go ahead and click OK. And now we'll go ahead and snap to the feature line right here. Make sure you snap to the feature line. If you look at your drawing coordinates in the bottom, it says 103.4578. We'll snap there, and that's our elevation. So that's perfect. Press enter. Now what we want to do is we're going to use just regular O tracking to acquire this point here. And as long as you have perpendicular turned on as a running O snap, O tracking will just use the perpendicular. And now what we want to do is draw a line 50 feet perpendicular this way. So type 50 and then enter. You'll notice it says, okay, I've got that XY. Now, how do you want me to define the Z? Do you want me to do it by slope, elevation, difference, surface, transition, etc.? Right now, we're in the default of grade, which is perfect. We want to be in that, and we'll just type in -4% and press enter. Press enter again to end the command. And now that's what this feature line is drawing at. You can kind of see it in this view here as we're just drawing it within our 3D view here as well. Now what we want to do is I want to select this feature line, and notice how the ribbon comes up with contextual commands. So we want to use the stepped offset tool, and we want to define a distance of 12 feet, and we're going to go 2% each direction to basically crown our entrance. We'll type 12, enter, and we'll go ahead and pick on M for multiple, so go ahead and click on that. And we'll pick on this side here and the grade that we want. So make sure you type in G for grade and then enter. And we want -2%, press enter. The grade's already set to -2, just press enter here and we're good to go there. As you can see, those lines are being drawn nicely at the correct elevations. Now, I do want to draw the outline of my parking lot. We could use the feature line tools. However, sometimes it's nice to just use the polyline tools, draw your object, and then define elevations or grades afterwards by turning your polylines into feature lines. I'm going to start the polyline command. I'll make sure I snap to at least get that elevation there, so it'll start our polyline at the elevation. And again, using regular AutoCAD O-tracking functionality, I can just acquire that point, go perpendicular, and the distance we want here is 100 units. Press enter. We'll do the same thing here. We'll zoom in a little bit here, acquire that point there, just go perpendicular, and we want 150, press enter. Same thing here, acquire this point, don't click, go that way, 150, press enter. And now what I can do is check this out. We can actually zoom in like so I can see those two geometric points. I'm going to acquire this point there, acquire this point there, and now I can actually grab the intersection of those 2 points. Click there, and then I'm not going to close this, I'm going to snap over here. And now we have the polyline completed. Later on, I know that I'm going to have a problem triangulating. I want to make sure I get a break line at the elevations of these other feature lines here. So I'm going to draw a 3D polyline instead. So 3P for 3D polyline, and we'll go ahead and snap here first, snap here next, and snap there next. And now we actually have a 3D polyline at that cross grade of -2%. Now let's go ahead and turn these objects into feature lines, and then we can grade them. So we'll go to Feature Line drop down here in the Home tab. We'll create feature lines from objects. We'll go ahead and pick our feature line here, and we'll even pick our feature line there, and we'll press enter. We'll go with the basic feature line style, that's fine. And we want to erase the existing entities, and we'll leave them at the elevations that they're at. We're going to change the other ones for the polyline in a minute. Click OK, and now those objects are feature lines. Now what we want to do is assign elevations. So one way to do this is to select your feature line and go to the elevation editor. This is a great tool that allows you to actually see the specific elevations at each location. So now what I can do is I can change anything. I can change the elevation at this point, I can change the grade ahead, the grade back, and so on. One of the things to point out is if we zoom out here a little bit, and we'll move our panorama window a little bit up here, you'll notice that as you select the actual row, it'll highlight in the file as to which vertice that you are at. So let's verify that we are first at the correct elevation. Notice how we see that it says 101.22. I'll press escape. Notice how it still stays in there, but let's go ahead and select this object instead and acquire this point here. Look down on our status bar and notice how it says 101.2178. So we're at the correct elevation. We're good to go. Let's say though we want to start this going down at -2%. So I can say grade ahead is -2, press enter. And now you can start to see that it's going to do that very nicely. We'll just select this one here. In this case, this would be the grade ahead. So we'll type in +2, press enter. And now it's going up that way as well. Let's say we want to define the drainage to go all the way kind of down towards this end here. There's a tool, if we go ahead and select our feature line, called Set Grade Slope Between Points. This is a great tool that allows us to actually start at a specific point. Again, as I always say, when you don't know what to do, look to the command line window. Specify the start point. We'll start there. It tells you, hey, that's the elevation. Is that what you want? You could type a new one in, but that's what we want, so we'll press enter. Then it says define the endpoint. So I could define how far I want to go with this, and I just want to go down to the point right there. And let's say our grade is supposed to be -2% sloping down that way. We'll just type -2, press enter, and we're done. It's literally that simple. Press escape to end the command, press escape to clear selection set. If you look at the panorama, you can kind of see how the grade is looking with each of the different vertices. If you want to make a quick change or edit to a grade or an elevation, you can do so actually without selecting the feature line. Navigate to the Modify panel and simply click on the Feature Line tool, and you'll notice this updates with all the specific tools that you might want to use. To access them, click on the Edit Elevations or Edit Geometry, and it'll update with those specific tools. So a really cool tool is this Quick Elevation Edit tool. I love this tool. It allows you to quickly just say, I want this to go down at -2%, press enter, and you can kind of verify and check how all your grades are looking at each of the different vertices and segments. Press escape to end the command, and now we're good to go. Now what we want to do, let's go ahead and first break this feature because we're going to join these other ones here so we get one feature and we can then fillet them around the corners. So first let's go ahead and click on the Break Feature Line tool, and we want to break this feature line here, so we'll pick the feature line. And what we want to do is break it at this exact point, because later on, you'll see, as we create a surface, we want triangulation to occur very nicely. Let's click on first point, and let's go ahead and break it right there at the same exact spot. If I hover here, you'll notice we have two feature lines. So now let's go ahead and break this one over here. We'll click on the break feature line, and we'll go ahead and select our feature line, pick first point, and break it at the same exact location. And now we have our three feature lines. So now we want to actually join these feature lines. Let's go ahead and make sure that this point here is actually connected to this one. Using grips, just grip pick this, and I'll snap to the end point of this line here. We'll just snap there, making sure we verify that. Go ahead and pick this grip here, pick, shift right click, endpoint, and pick there. Now let's go ahead and click on the Join Feature Lines tool, and we'll go ahead and pick here, and we'll pick this one, and we'll just keep going around. So we've got that one already, and click this one next, and click this one next, press enter, and now we have one feature line just like we need. The next thing we want to do is simply fill it around the areas that need to be filleted. So if you look here, there's a nice little tool called the fillet command. We'll go ahead and select our feature line first. As you hover over it, it shows you the fillet that's going to occur. Notice how you can do all or edit your radius right there. We'll go ahead and pick on the radius first, and let's say we want to start with a radius of 20 feet. Press enter here, and we'll go ahead and just do the 20. And again, just hovering over the different locations here. And let's say for our radius around here, we want the radius to be 15. So we'll just change the radius to 15. We'll go ahead and make sure we get that. Click, click. And then for our roadway, we want the radius to be 25. Click, click, and then press enter to end the command. Now, what we have to do is simply go ahead and actually select this feature line here and move it to the correct location. Because we trimmed that out, we now need to do it over here, so we'll just snap over there, and we'll go ahead and snap over here. The last step is to insert elevation PIs. This way we get proper triangulation. The more vertices, the better. Of course, that will also add additional triangles to the surface, making it a little bit larger. It's just something to be aware of. We'll click on Insert Elevation Points. Notice the options available. We'll go ahead and do an increment. And we'll type in a distance of 5 units, press enter, and there we go. Now, before we insert them to this point, let's go ahead and select that point there, and we'll snap to that point there, and snap to that point there, and we'll go ahead and click on Insert Elevation Point, Increment, 5 units, press enter, and now we have our feature lines created. So let's just select one, right-click, select Similar. We'll go ahead and pick this one as well, and let's take this into the Object Viewer, and there's not much of a great difference, but you can kind of see feature lines. Next step is to work with a grading object to daylight them and tie into the existing ground surface. All grading objects will be defined by a set of grading criteria. Design criteria controls the geometry and behavior of your grading objects. In most designs, multiple grading objects with different criteria will be used to model your site. Grading groups need to live in a site. As you can see in our tourist parking lot, there's a category for grading groups. To create a grading group, navigate to the Create Design panel, Grading dropdown, and Grading Creation tools. The first thing you want to do is define the grading group you want this grading group you're going to create to go into. It's important for it to go into the same site where your feature lines exist. Click on the dropdown here and pick Tourist Parking Lot, and we'll go ahead and create a brand new grading group called Daylighting. For now, we will turn Automatic Surface Creation off. That way, we don't have any updates being done to the surface. That's the great thing about grading groups is they link to a surface once you have this toggled on. We'll click OK, and OK right there. Let's now set the surface, and we'll go ahead and pick on Combined EG. This would be the surface you're seeking with the grade to surface criteria. The criteria you see here is defined in the grading criteria set. This is defined in the Settings tab, Grading Category, and then we have Grading Criteria Sets. So in the basic set, we have these 4 generic criteria. We want to actually just pick the grade to surface grading criteria, and we'll click on the drop down here, and let's click on Create Grading. So before any grading can actually be done with the grading group, you have to have at least one feature line created to start off with. From that feature line, you can then create additional gradings that will be linked to the feature line, and any updates to the feature line will update the connected grading objects. We'll go ahead and pick the feature line there. Look at the command line window. It's asking us to select the grading side. We'll go ahead and pick the outside here. Notice how you can actually define a specific length to length area of where you want to do grading. Civil 3D will automatically transition gradings that aren't the same. So if you have a 2:1, let's say, going over here, and a 3:1 going over here, it'll transition them if you'd like it to. For now, we'll apply this to the entire length, and we'll say yes. What's our format? We'll just go with Enter for slope. Let's try a 4:1 first and see where this takes us with our proposed parking lot. For the fill, we'll do 4 as well, press enter, and you'll see the grading gets created automatically. If we were to move or make modifications to this feature line, it would automatically update the grading object. Press escape to end the command. If we look at our 3D view, we notice that we're getting a little bit too much tie-in over here, so let's go ahead and actually edit this grading so we have a 2:1 instead. Click on the drop down here and choose Edit Grading. All you have to do is simply hover over the area where there's a grading object and Civil 3D will automatically find it. We'll go ahead and click here, and now we're actually editing those parameters used to create this grading object. We'll do a slope of 2:1 in the cut and a slope of 2:1 in the fill, and our grading object will update automatically. Let's say that's the final grading that we want. Now let's go ahead and pick on the grading dropdown. Let's use a command called Create Infill. When Civil 3D has flat areas, you need to simply create an infill and it'll close off the areas for you, thereby completing your eventual surface that you're going to create. We'll click Create Infill, and we'll go ahead and simply hover in the area where there's a closed area. We'll click here, there's one. And if you look over here, there's actually another one because it does see that there's an area to close in here. We'll click there and press enter. All we need to do is add in the different feature lines to our eventual surface. So now let's go ahead and turn on the surface creation for this grading group. Let's right click on daylighting and choose properties. We'll toggle on automatic surface creation and we'll give this surface a style of 1:5 design. Click OK, OK there. And we do want to eventually do volume calculations, so we'll toggle on the volume-based surface. This is an automatic functionality if you toggle this on. We'll click OK, and there is our surface. So if we select this, right-click Object Viewer, the only thing left to do is bring in the feature lines to finish off the triangulation. So we'll go ahead and select this one here. We'll go ahead and select this one there as well. And we'll even pick the edge of the road here that we created initially. Notice the contextual ribbon has the Add to Surface as Break Line option. Click on that, and we'll go ahead and pick on the daylighting surface we want to add this to. Click OK, and we'll just go with the defaults. Click OK here, and now you can see our surface is completed with our triangulation and everything. If you make any changes to your grading objects or the feature lines, the surface will update automatically. Grading objects can automate volume calculations. If we go ahead and select our grading object right here, and we navigate to the grading group properties, you'll notice if you navigate to the properties palette, it immediately shows you the cut, fill, and net volume that you have defined by this grading group and the volume-based surface. And will update dynamically if you make any edits to your grading objects. If you wanted to copy this and paste it into another application or inside AutoCAD, you would simply right-click, choose Copy All, and then Control-V and paste it into another application. There's also the ability to go to the Grading Volumes tools. Let's go ahead and add in the group that we want to work with. Click OK, and you can basically see the same exact volume calculations we just saw in the grading properties. However, what's kind of nice about the Grading Volume tools is it does allow you to play around with your grading objects and your site and raise or lower them by specific values. If we go ahead and select Entire Group, you can actually then lower or raise it by a specific value. If you wanted to make a selection set of a specific grading group to raise or lower, you could simply do it there and then pick in the drawing which one you want to affect. Let's go ahead and pick Entire Group, and let's just raise it by 1 foot. We'll pick the Raise command, and you'll notice that the grading object will update automatically, and it will show you what that new volume is. You want to be very careful with this tool though, because as you can see, it can mess up your surface quite a bit here. There's also this really cool tool called the Automatically Raise Lower to Balance the Volumes tool. This one you most definitely want to be careful with. If we click on it, you can auto balance your volumes by giving Civil 3D a specific value for required volume. Let's say our required volume for this site is 5,000 cubic yards. So we'll type in 5,000 and then click OK here. What Civil 3D will do is it'll do its calculations and it'll raise and lower the different grading groups within the site, as well as the actual feature lines in the site as well. So you definitely want to be careful with this. You can't get undesired results based upon how it's automating that grading group. In fact, if we look at the command line window, you'll notice that it actually has done a few things like raised this feature line and lowered that one by a specific value. And as you can see, doing its best to auto adjust the volumes, but of course our surface is not looking how you'd want it to actually look, as you can see when we take it into the object viewer. So it's a pretty cool tool, just be careful with it, and typically you'll use your feature line edit tools as well as the grading editing tools to automate the volume calculations that you need.